Good morning, fellow Africans. I speak this morning for the dignity of Africans in this critical time of COVID 19. I urge every one of you from all parts of Nigeria and other African countries to come together to join the efforts in this cause. The world now knows what some of us knew decades ago about China and its master servant relationship with Africa, particularly in Nigeria. COVID 19 is only making it clearer to some of us at this time. Consider the following Chinese maltreatment of Nigeria and the other African countries recently. 4 days ago, April 13, 2020, CNN reported, and I quote, African students and expatriates in the southern Chinese city were last week subjected to forced coronavirus testing and arbitrary 14-day safe quarantine, regardless of the recent travel history. Large numbers of African nationals were also left homeless after being evicted by landlords and rejected by hotels in the city. Quote closes. On April 4, 2020, Al Jazeera reported that some hotels have a sign saying, Black people are banned from entering. Of course, Nigerians are furious, and rightfully so. But we must ask ourselves one question. Why is the Chinese government treating Nigerians this way in China? The answer is very simple. The Chinese government knows that the Nigerian government will not do anything about it. 1. They know that over 95% of Nigerian leaders do not care about Nigerians, their people. 2. They know that Nigeria depends so much on China. Indeed, they know that the relationship between China and Nigeria is that of the master and the servant. Here is the evidence. Nigerian governments, federal and states, mostly depend on Chinese engineers, not Nigerian engineers, to build Nigerian roads, bridges, street lights, among others. Consider the following. On May 14, 2010, BBC reported that Nigeria and China would sign $23 billion deal for 3 refineries. On May 17, 2010, China Daily reported that Chinese engineers boost Nigeria's roads. On July 6, 2010, BBC reported that China will build $8 billion oil refinery in Lekki, Lagos. On May 4, 2019, Xinhua, a Chinese newspaper, reported that Chinese firm was boosting rural Nigeria's economy with road project. On November 21, 2019, China Daily reported that China helps Nigeria create a power transmission network. Of course, there are more instances of this near total dependency on China. Now, what does Nigeria get out of this dependency on China? Well, what does one expect a slave to get from his master? The slave will naturally get the following: abuse, exploitation, humiliation, subjugation, starvation, and rejection. You see, the world knows that China is the origin and the inventor of COVID 19, the deadliest enemy of humanity the world has ever seen. Now, what is China doing to stop the spread of this mortal enemy? China is sending ventilators to countries it considers equal. However, China is busy blaming Nigerians and other Africans as the people spreading COVID-19. But why is China shifting this blame to Nigerians and other Africans? In my town, we put it this way: if you make yourself a rat, cats will start chasing you to kill and eat you. For decades now, over 95% of the Nigerian leaders have turned Nigerians into rats, leaving China and its friends to chase and devour Nigerians anywhere possible. Specifically, these are what we see. Every year, over 95% of Nigerian leaders and elites abandon education in Nigeria, abandon research in Nigeria, send their children to study abroad, only to turn around and hire Chinese engineers to build Nigerian infrastructure. Every year, over 95% of Nigerian leaders and the elites abandon Nigerian hospitals to fly to China and other nations for medical checkups and treatment. Every year, over 95% of Nigerian leaders and the elites are running to China and other foreign countries to open bank accounts with the Nigerian oil money, thereby starving fellow Nigerians to death so that Chinese people will live a better life. Every year, over 95% of Nigerian leaders and the elites are busy teaching Nigerians the ideology of mass destruction. That leadership means to rob your people, buy dozens of cars from China and other countries, and send the remaining loot to China and other countries. Now tell me why China or anyone in this world should respect any country with this kind of leadership, where 95% of the leaders and the elites proudly hate their people this way. We have come to a turning point in our lives where some of us are beginning now to ask this question: how do we end the abuse, exploitation, and humiliation that have gone global? What is the solution? I will continue to look at the long-term solution. You see, what matters the most in this life we are living is not necessarily what people do to you. Quite often, we cannot stop our haters from hating us or doing all sorts of things to us. What matters the most is what you do about what your haters do to you. Let me put it differently. If an intruder knocks you down and take everything you have, there are two choices you face. You can stay lying down like a toothless bulldog, moaning, groaning, and complaining to anyone who cares to listen. Or you use that energy to stand up like a dog with some teeth, fight the intruder squarely, and keep the intruder at bay. Specifically, 95% of the Nigerian leaders and the elites must stand up today, think smart, and pursue without further delay actions that will economically empower and industrialize Nigeria, because we have the money and the brains to do so. 1. Promote quality education. Build quality schools and good libraries in your states in Nigeria. Visit your alma maters at least once a year. Donate funds to your alma maters. Fund research projects in your universities. Dream of Nigeria being an industrialized and a manufacturing country, and pursue that dream with vigor and determination in your state. After all, leadership is action, not a position. The bottom line is that Nigerians need, for instance, quality engineers, not Chinese engineers. 2. Promote healthcare delivery. Build at least one huge modern hospital in your state to treat everyone. Similarly, the national government must build a huge state-of-the-art hospital at the capital. The shame of flying to China and other foreign countries for medical checkups and treatment with our oil money, and the often being brought back in body bags to Nigeria must stop.
Today, you cannot even run to China or any foreign country to be treated for COVID 19.
Show the world that you can actually think and act like real leaders. Bank in Nigeria. Bank in your own state financial institutions. Think of who you are hurting by piling up millions and billions of dollars of your country's funds abroad. Think of Nigerians who are dying daily because of the senseless act of creating unemployment, hunger, and starvation in your state and in the country. Let it be said of you that you belong to a few leaders and the elites in the country who understand the true meaning of charity begins at home, not in Chinese or Swiss banks, for instance. Help stop the caricature of your country in the world. 4. Stop teaching Nigerian youths how to hate fellow Nigerians. Teach them patriotism and practice patriotism with actions. As you travel abroad, say to the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United States, France, Germany, Italy, etc. Pay attention to what the leaders of those countries are doing to inculcate patriotism and love among their people. Always remember one of the songs by Bob Marley, Africa Unite. 5. Of course, the public has a role to play too. One of the greatest civil rights leaders of our generation, Stephen Biko, taught us that the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. If the oppressed do not fight against oppression, the oppressor will never stop. Cheering up those 95% leaders and the elites in our country who rob us cold and deny us greener pasture at home, only to grow such pastures abroad with our oil money is insane. It makes no sense at all and will never make sense. Let it be said when the dust of COVID-19 finally settles that Nigeria has learned a big lesson from this and start empowering its own people. A note to uninitiated. I am certain that someone out there might be saying this to himself or herself. What is this guy doing in the United States complaining? I have to respond to this kind of comment because I have heard it before. This kind of comment or question only gives more impetus to those robbing Nigeria, robbing their states, to continue doing so. That said, let me make it clearer. The blame for the destruction of Nigeria, which has been going on for 3 decades now at least, rests squarely on the shoulders of the 95% of the Nigerian leaders and the elites who rob Nigeria constantly only to hide the loot abroad. Consider these 2 examples. In 2005, it was reported by Telegraph that Nigeria's past rulers stole $352 billion of the Nigerian oil money and hid them abroad. This year, 2020, the national budget of Nigeria is $35 billion. If you divide $352 billion by $35 billion, you will get a 10-year national budget of Nigeria in the private bank accounts of some Nigerian leaders in foreign countries. In 2015, it was reported by BBC that President Buhari asked the United States government to help Nigeria recover $150 billion in private bank accounts of some Nigerians abroad. If you divide $150 billion by $35 billion, you will get a 4-year national budget of Nigeria in the private bank accounts of some Nigerian leaders in foreign countries. Here are the results of these merciless robberies: massive unemployment, hunger, starvation, and more corruption in the country. And those who managed to escape the country remain abroad without knowing the time they will go home, resulting to what I consider self-imposed exile. If we can get at least 30 to 40% of Nigerian leaders and elites to know the meaning of patriotism and demonstrate it with actions, in 5 years from now, Nigeria will come closer to the economic development level of some other OPEC nations, as in Kuwait, Iran, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and reduce reliance on crafty China. It is all about leadership. It is all about common sense. Thank you for listening, and may God bless you with long life, wisdom, and save you from coronavirus. I am Bedford Umez.